All right, guys, so hopefully you are all caught up and you have your cactus planner on your piece of watercolor paper, and you also have your reference images on your sketchbook. We are going to flip to a new page in our sketchbook, and we are going to practice drawing some succulents. So much like we practiced drawing the planters yesterday and then chose what we're going to do, we're going to kind of practice and sketch out some of the plants and the plant shapes on here, and then you are going to start applying them to your planter. This is going to take a little bit longer than the planter, so we'll probably practice today and then apply to our planter tomorrow. Okay, so there are so many different kinds of cactuses, and you can't really do it wrong. Whatever you decide to do, there's probably some sort of cactus that looks like it. I have supplied you a ton of reference images for you to look at. So once we kind of buzz through this really quick, please take the time to look at those reference images and use those to help you draw what you want to draw and practice, okay? So there's a couple different kind of styles I want to kind of teach you about really quick. And the first one is, it's going to look a little bit like an aloe plant. If you don't know what an aloe plant looks like, it is a little bit more long and kind of pointy. And a little bit more smooth. It doesn't have like the typical thorns that a normal cactus does. It's a little different than that. So what we're going to do is we're kind of basically going to make long, elongated triangle-like shapes. So we're going to kind of come up and then back down. And then you're basically just going to kind of weave those back and forth. So I'm going to do one on the other side, and so it's going to kind of look like horns for a minute. But then I'm just going to kind of put another one in. And then put another one in, and it's almost kind of like a basket. And I'm just kind of going back and forth. So that's sort of a basic way to create an aloe plant. Now this one is really, really straight across the top. If you want to make it a little bit more unique, you could kind of vary the sizes a little bit more as you go and draw. So you could make sure that there are, you know, different lengths happening inside your plant. So this one to me is a little bit more interesting than when it's flat across the top. Okay, but you kind of get the idea, is it just kind of goes back and forth and it kind of crisscrosses and weaves. But we got to make sure that we're not like crisscrossing all the way through, because that doesn't make sense. We've got to make sure that our plant makes sense as far as like where the overlaps and our underlaps are. So that one's pretty simple. Another simple one is a cactus you see a lot if you go to like Arizona, and they kind of just like grow in pieces on top of each other. So they have like these sort of petal shapes, and they're almost like eggs, kind of, a little pointier at the bottom. But then they just grow other pieces out of them, and sometimes they're smaller when they're little, right? And these cactuses can get kind of bushy and really overgrown. And they just kind of look like that. And then you can go back and add some details by adding, you know, little, I'm doing like little sections of 3 little spikes. But definitely make sure that you add some detail to your cactuses where they need them. And to your succulents, because if you just draw them as a basic shape, sometimes we won't see enough detail and texture to make it interesting. Sometimes these cactuses can have flowers, so you can, you know, draw little flowers coming out of a bloom, because the flower always comes before the next plant. Oops, sorry. Just like a tree in the springtime, a lot of times will flower before it gets its leaves. Okay. So again, little like chunks of 3 for your spikes on this guy will do just fine. Okay, so if I'm sectioning off my paper. All right. We have to be careful about how we draw. Some of the succulent photos and reference photos I show you are taken from above, but our planter is taken from looking at it from the side. So you do need to make sure that when you are drawing, you're always thinking about how it would look to you if you were, you know, looking from it from here versus over the top. Okay, so a lot of times you see these succulents that look a little bit more like a flower. They kind of have lots of like petals, and they grow sort of round. So drawing it from the side, we would see something more like this, and then we would see that petal, but then we would see kind of petals working our way around. And then they kind of like overlap and you'll see another layer. Ooh, this is not very good. I'm gonna start over. See, and because I don't have a reference image in front of me, it makes it a little trickier. So I'm actually gonna pause my video. I'm gonna pull up one of my reference images, because a lot of times, guys, as artists, you need something to look at to be able to do it the right way. These are simple enough that I kind of know the basics, but when I'm doing something a little bit more detailed, it's definitely important to not just try to make it up out of your head, but to definitely have that image to look at. Okay, so I pulled up my image, and I'm glad I did, because I think I want to draw this the opposite way. I'm going to start from the center and work my way out so I don't have to worry about the overlaps getting in the way. So the center is sort of bunched in and looks a little bit kind of like this, and there would be a petal there. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in for you guys. And then it kind of just builds outward. So I'm kind of looking at my image as I go. It's tricky. This one is definitely a little bit more challenging, and I don't draw succulents all day long, so take your time, and if you really like these sort of flower petal ones, take the time to really kind of study it a little bit more and draw from the center out. Okay, so those are those standard like stacked kind of flower-based succulents, and I did draw it pretty small. You'd probably want to go a little bit larger so that when we go to paint, you don't have super teeny tiny details, okay? So that is another type of succulent. There's lots of like kind of more like that look plant-like, so that almost can droop over the edge. So like if this is your planter, I'm gonna make a quick simple planter. If that was your planter, you could make some of these next ones that kind of droop down. So I'm going to droop with like two different like stems, if you will. And then I'm going to draw these leaf-like shapes in a pattern downward. And be careful of overlaps if one tucks behind the other one. So that's kind of nice because it gives you a little like change in, not everything has to grow upward, right? You can have some plants that droop down. So there are cactuses that are a little bit, or succulents that are a little bit more droopy and can go from there. Similar to this style, you can do it upward. So you can have, there's these sort of like more stick-like ones that kind of have these long pieces that kind of grow off of each other, much like this one, but instead it's more straight, more like noodles. But they're full shapes, they're not lines, right? And it just kind of grows in this kind of bushy pattern. So you'd want to add enough that it kind of fills in from there. So there's two different kinds there. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different styles there. Now we have the kind of classic cactus. So if we move down here and you think about, you know, what you kind of see in cartoons and things like that, but they do sort of look like that, is your sort of like thick-armed cactus. It's very round. And the arms in a cactus can grow so many different directions. So our planter would be down here at this point. And then usually on a cactus like this, your spines, your textures come from these kind of long lines. And when you get up close to the cactus, they look almost like ridges. So they'd be a little bit more like that. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else I am missing that you might want to come up with. Again, I've given you so many reference images that you can look at if you're not quite sure what to do. Oh, I know, there's one of my favorite ones. So this one's typically pretty short, and it basically I just kind of start by drawing like a cucumber-like shape, like a big round oval. But then you kind of break it up by giving it some spines. I'm using like a wavy line there. but that wavy line has that point. Like, I literally mean like waves of the ocean line. Because these are actually sort of flat and geometric, but so this edge kind of helps with that. But then typically there is like a bright flower on top. So you can draw in a red, you know, flower that grows at the top of that. And then you can make these different sizes. So again, you could kind of bunch them up. So you can make 2 at once. And then again, add that spiny edge. Add another spiny edge. And then one more on the other side. And there you've got a little cactus. And you could add a little flower there if you wanted to too. I'm just coloring it in so you can see the difference of what I'm drawing. Okay, so there's a 7th variety. Whatever you want to come up with, whatever your combination is totally okay with me. There are so many different types of succulents out there that I want you to explore a little bit. You can do a little Googling on your own, but I've given you 7 different varieties to kind of give you a head start about what you can look for and what you can do. Okay, so today is all about practicing. I don't want you to apply anything to your final pot yet. I want you just to practice. All right, guys, enjoy creating your plants. I hope you learn about some of them. I don't even know all of these names. They've got some crazy names, so you could look that up as well. Have a great one.